please take your time. All right. We are now online both in YouTube streaming and in Zoom. We have already Mbak Linda here. Mbak Linda, please let me call you Mbak because I am Arek Surabaya too. I'm originally from Kenjeran actually. Yeah, Mbak Linda, Dr. Linda Bustan, who is just graduated from ICRS, and she will be presenting a topic which is entitled "The Construction on Chinese Christian Identities in Mandarin-speaking Churches in Surabaya." And Linda Bustan is a lecturer at Petra Christian University in Surabaya. She finished her doctoral in Interreligious Studies and Indonesian Consortium for Religious Studies, or ICRS in Yogyakarta, and her dissertation focused on Chinese Christian identity. In general, she will convey the dynamics of Chinese Christian in Surabaya in the post-New Order era to capture the heterogeneity within Chinese communities. Her research focused on Surabaya due to its long history of Chinese Christian community, especially in regards to the total Chinese in Surabaya. Without further ado, I would like to invite Mbak Linda to deliver her topic today. Dr. Linda Bustan, I see you no longer can wait, so please, the maximum time is 45 minutes, and then we will be going further to discuss in depth. Dr. Linda Bustan, and the stage is yours. Please.
Okay. Thank you very much for introduction, Mas Iman. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this meeting. Thank you for Bu Esther Kunchara, Professor Esther, one of my colleagues in Petra Christian University, but also helped me when I have to finish my dissertation. Bu Esther Kunchara, Professor Esther Kunchara, helped me in which he gave me a very important input to my dissertation. Thank you, Professor Esther Kunchara. Okay, the presentation today is based on my dissertation entitled "The Construction of Chinese Christian Identities in the Mandarin-speaking Churches in Surabaya." Let me share my screen. Okay. Why I choose the topic? There are 4 reasons why I choose to discuss about Chinese Christian identities in the Mandarin-speaking churches. In particular, Chinese Christian in Mandarin-speaking churches in Surabaya that originated as the Tiong Kauw, Surabaya, that was established in 1928 as the first Chinese church in Surabaya. The first reason is in my observation and literature studies, I found there is a significant unfamiliarity of Chinese Christian community regarding their heterogeneity and dynamics in sub-ethnicities, cultures, and religious streams. In July 2019, I presented a paper about Chinese Christian heterogeneity in terms of dialect and culture at the State Islamic University in Surabaya. I explained that Chinese Christians speak various dialects, including Hokkien, Canton, Hakka, Hwee, and also Mandarin. The participants consisted of students and lecturers who were mostly Muslims. They responded they did not know that Chinese Christians are heterogeneous. In their mind, Chinese Christians are homogeneous. This is in line with what Suryadinata stated in his book Pribumi Indonesians, the Chinese minority in China that neither Pribumi or local Chinese perceptions reflect the complexities of the local Chinese society. The second reason is a negative stereotyping toward Chinese Christian still existed. Chinese are perceived as being exclusive and distant in their relationship with the locals, having economic privilege and divided national loyalties. As Christian, a Chinese Christian in the Mandarin-speaking churches in particular, but Chinese in general, they are suspicion to proselytize other religions, including Muslim, is based on the dissertation of Mujibur Rahman and also the dissertation, the book of Dr. Fatimah Hussein. A third, there is a saying, one more Christian, one less Christian, that cause a perception that Chinese belief or Chinese tradition is not compatible with Christianity. Fourth, the research on Chinese Christian, especially Toto Chinese Christian, are scared. The available research related to Toto Chinese Christian were conducted by Marcus Domingus Dawa, 2016, Chang Yo-hun, 2016, Susi Ong, 2008, and Suleiman and Steinbring, 2008. This perception, this presentation will answer two questions. First, what are the historical backgrounds that have constructed the Chinese, Indonesian, and more specifically, Surabayan Chinese Christian identities in the Mandarin-speaking churches? And second, how is the dynamic of being Chinese Christian in the Mandarin-speaking churches in Surabaya can construct their ethnic and religious identities? Before I answer the questions, I have to clarify what I mean about Chinese Christian and Mandarin-speaking churches. In the term of Chinese Christian refers to the members of First Chinese Church in Surabaya, the Tiong Kauw, that developed into two synods, Gereja Kristus Tuhan and Gereja Kristen Abdiel. They consist of first, second, and third generations. The first generations can be considered as Toto, that understood as China-born Chinese, Chinese pure blood, and Chinese migrants. However, some interlocutors identify themselves as Toto because they still know their Chinese family roots and have Chinese family in mainland China, even though they were born in Indonesia. However, number of scholars state that the Toto Indonesian Chinese is no longer exists in Indonesia due to the fact that most of Chinese Indonesian are locally born or have mixed blood with the non-Chinese and cannot speak Chinese any longer. They should be termed as Peranakan Chinese instead. The second term that I use is the Mandarin-speaking churches. Follow Hun, so the category of Mandarin-speaking churches means to the churches that conduct the services in Mandarin language or bilingual, Mandarin and Indonesian. For collecting data, I use qualitative approach to collect data and analysis. Data was collected by employing semi-structured interviews, participant observation, and literature review. I interviewed 28 informants from various backgrounds, men and women, difference in ages, generations, religions, Christian and Muslims, dialects or sub-ethnics, Toto and Peranakan, leaders and activists. The informants were selected by using the snowball technique, in which interviews were conducted to those referred by the previous one. I personally involved in various activities in the Mandarin-speaking churches, such as services, including special Imlek service, seminars, and informal meetings to get first-hand experiences on the idea of Chineseness. The primary resources are church history documents, bulletins, brochures, weekly news, church order, photos, church anniversary books, and family biographies from the first and second generations. The secondary sources are academic journals, books, and writings related to the Chinese Christian, the Mandarin-speaking churches, and Christian-Muslim relation. The historical background, so I want to explain the historical background that affect to the construction of the ethnic identity of Chinese Christian in the Mandarin-speaking churches. The historical background of the first Chinese church in Surabaya was started in 1900 when Chinese Christian came from mainland China to Surabaya. This first generation consists of various dialects, including Hokkien, Canton, Hakka, Fucho, and Hwee. They established houses of worship based on their own dialects. In 1909, the United States Episcopal Methodist Church adopted the Hokkien house of worship into a church as they have the biggest numbers of adherents. In the following years, other dialects joined the church, namely the Cantonese in 1910, Fucho and Hwee in 1918. When the Episcopal Methodist Church had to end their working term in Java, including in Surabaya, due to the world economic crisis that forced them to reorganize their mission strategies. In 1928, they helped the church to be registered to the Dutch government under the name the THKTHK Surabaya. It thus became the first Chinese church in Surabaya. In 1968, under the new order that issued the assimilation program, the church THKTHK Surabaya has to change its name into Gereja Kristus Tuhan, GKT, or the Church of Christ the Lord. Later on, in 1976, GKT has divided to two synods, GKT itself and GKA, Gereja Kristen Abdiel, or the Abdiel Christian Church. Due to internal conflicts, different opinions regarding the policy of church assets, the planning to build a seminary, and a rejection of clergy nomination to be ordained as a pastor. Since then, the GKT and GKA developed their churches, expanding their branches to outside Surabaya also, including to some cities in East Java. In Surabaya, the GKT has 10 church branches, meanwhile the GKA has 19 church branches. Government policies as a historical background also affect to the construction of the identities of Chinese church, Chinese Christian in the Mandarin-speaking churches. Government policies from the Dutch colonial to the New Order have influenced the ethnic Chinese in general, but also to the Totok Chinese Christian in particular. When the first generation Totok Chinese Christians came from mainland China to Surabaya in the 1900s, Surabaya was under the Dutch colonial government. The racist classification and zoning system issued by the Dutch colonial. Chinese were categorized as foreign. The policies brought a change in the relationship between the Chinese and the indigenous people who were mostly Muslims. Before this policy was implemented, the Chinese in Java could freely interact with the locals. Chinese men often married local women as well. After the zoning policy system was applied, Chinese, including Chinese Christian, were forced to live in one community as Chinese that called Pecinan. It is the reason why the Chinese Christian in the THKTHK Surabaya could preserve their Chineseness, even though according to Ong Hok Ham, Chinese in Java were merged with the local and they did not maintain their Chinese culture anymore. However, The Dutch joining policy helped the Totok Chinese Christian to maintain and strengthen their Chineseness. During the Japanese occupation in 1942 until 1945, Japanese forbade anything Western, reopened the Chinese schools, and encouraged the use of Mandarin language. The strengthening of this Chineseness made the Totok Chinese Christian feel more superior than the Peranakan Chinese. The strengthening the Chinese identity had created a suspicion that Chinese, including the Totok Chinese Christian, were foreigner, thus the outsider, which eventually worsened the relation between the Chinese and the indigenous people. Therefore, it created an ambiguity between recognition and pressures. In the Old Order period in 1945, the memory of the ethnic Chinese identity as being foreigner and outsider still existed. The Chinese were perceived with suspicion, especially their loyalty to the Indonesian. This could be seen in the assimilation and integration program for the Chinese Indonesian created by the Old Order government through the Agency of National Unity Development or Lembaga Pembinaan Kesatuan Bangsa (LPKB), whose main assignment was to implement an assimilation program. However, the assimilation program in the Old Order was held without forcing compared to the New Order regime. The Chinese, including Chinese Christian, could choose to emerge with local or preserve their Chineseness in personal or church orientation. In this case, THKTHK Surabaya has chosen to preserve their Chineseness in the church. It's different from Peranakan Chinese church that choose to be Indonesian that called Gereja Kristen Indonesia. During the New Order era in 1965 until 1998, Chinese were perceived as problem. The New Order government issued the assimilation that forced Chinese to abandon their Chineseness in public. One important aspect of the assimilation program was name change. In order to follow the policy, the THKTHK has changed its name into Indonesian name, Gereja Kristus Tuhan. According to Suryadinata, the name change is the most effective tools to alter the ethnic Chinese identity, Gereja Kristus Tuhan identity. Gereja Kristus Tuhan could still maintain their Chineseness through using the Mandarin in their services. Nevertheless, the closing of the Chinese school affected on the ability to speak Mandarin among Chinese church members. Since 1970s, it started to hold bilingual services, Mandarin services interpreted in Indonesian language. Later on in 1973, to train Chinese young generation, one of the GKA church has conducted Bible class in Mandarin for internal church members. After the New Order, the Mandarin Bible class has developed into Mandarin course that openly for public until now. From this explanation, the government policies have important role in the identity construction of Chinese Christian in the Mandarin-speaking churches. The Chinese in general and the Chinese in the Mandarin-speaking churches in particular have never become themselves, while some policies seem to have given them a space to express their ethnic culture and religious identities. For the most part, those policies has created ambiguity on the part of the Chinese in defining their identity, either individually or communally. Now I want to discuss how ethnic identity construction focuses on in-group and out-group interaction. Okay. Within the in-group interaction, three important aspects are discussed, namely kinship, marriage, and language. First, on the aspect of kinship, the older generation of the Chinese Christian in the Mandarin-speaking churches have given preferences in working within the frame of their kinship. This has proven to be effective in maintaining the Chinese identity. Second, of the aspect of marriage, there are differences between the older and younger members of the THKTHK Chinese Christian churches in retaining marriage as their ethnic identity markers. Yeah? Whereas the older generation hold the argument that couples should come from the same ethnic background, Chinese background, but for the younger generation is more relaxed. They not have to choose their spouse from the same ethnic background. For them, is they feel that they feel can interact with the women or the men as their spouse. So for them, it's not matter of the ethnic, but how they can relate with the other person. Third, even though mastering Mandarin has no longer become exclusive marker of Chinese identity, the THKTHK Chinese Christian in the Mandarin-speaking churches, especially the older generation, affirm who they are through the use of Mandarin. Within the context of GKA and GKT and GKA, even though the members and the leaders of GKA were from various ethnic backgrounds, the GKT is more open in terms of accepting other ethnic and religious groups. This is shown from example in the church policy that allowed interreligious marriage, even though it had to change due to the 1974 marriage law, which prohibit interreligious marriage. I will explain it in the next slide. So how about out-group interaction? The three main actors of the out-group interaction are mission institution, government, and the local, especially Surabaya Muslim. My study shows that while on the one hand, Western mission institution might lessen the ethnic identity as Chinese, on the other hand, they have helped strengthening the ethnic Chinese identity of the Chinese Christian in the Mandarin-speaking churches. As a result, they form a hybrid culture, which was also reflected in the church building, in relation to show how the government policies have influenced the construction of the identity of Chinese Christian in the Mandarin-speaking churches. The assimilation program of the new order government is worthy of a mention. From various pressures directed toward the Chinese in general, it's suffice to conclude that this program had helped lessening the ethnic identity of Chinese Christian. Nevertheless, the stigma of being Chinese as an outsider and Christianity as the colonial religion and proselytizing still remain in the post-New Order era, and to some extent being obstacle on the harmonious interaction between Chinese Christian in the Mandarin-speaking churches with the local Surabayans. I argue, however, that it is ethnic identity rather than religious identity that affected more the interaction between Chinese Christian in the Mandarin-speaking churches and the local Surabayan Muslim. So how about religious identity construction? The four key actors of religious identity construction within the Mandarin-speaking churches are the mission institution, the role of charismatic religious leaders, government that issued policies, and local Surabayan. The mission institution has shown a tension between teachings and activities at the Mandarin-speaking churches that are mostly related to the vertical relation between human beings and God. The role of charismatic religious leaders, in this case, the important religious leaders are John Sung and Andrew G. John Sung, especially influenced by the past teaching of John Sung and the traditional Chinese rituals that are still preserved and observed by some members of the churches. This is based on the assumption of the incompatibility of the Chinese belief and Christianity. and has resulted of the backstage and frontstage performances as a form of their negotiation, which could be understood at different categories. While some Chinese Christians still perform their tradition by giving new meanings to their tradition and thus creating a hybridity in the construction of their religious identity, some others could be categorized as syncretic because they worship gods in the Chinese belief who were believed as having important roles in their lives as parallel as God in their Christian beliefs. This negotiation, however, still does negate the fact that due to the New Order's policy of choosing 1 out of 5 religions, the Chinese had to construct their religious identity within the frame of the word religion, abandoning their cultural beliefs in relation to how the interaction of the Chinese Christian in the Mandarin-speaking churches with the local Surabayan Muslim have constructed the former religious identity. My study concludes that they become an open religious group when dealing with moderate Muslims. Conclusion. The historical background and the dynamic interaction have been affected of the ethnic and religious identities construction of Chinese Christian in the Mandarin-speaking churches. It also have affected on continuity and change of the meaning of being Chinese Christian. In-group and out-group interaction influence how the old and young generation perceive themselves as Chinese Christian. By opening a space for the possibilities of new meanings in practicing Chinese tradition with Christian values, it shaped their ethnic and religious identities in the between spaces, create a characteristic of neither not that is called hybrid identity. So, Mas Imam, that's all my presentation, and I give back to you, and we can start the discussion. Thank you, Mas Imam.
Thank you, Mbak Linda. And that was very nice presentation. So for those who want to ask or comment or any response to Mbak Linda's presentation, so please feel free. You could write it down on the chat, and for those who are online in YouTube streaming, so please feel free. I will say hi to Pak Leo. Pak Leo, maybe you can respond. Or Mbak Ida. I see Mbak Ida there, but you lost her now. But okay, please, everyone. Mbak Linda was presenting the negotiation of Surabayan Chinese Christian identity. I'm wondering why. Yes, please feel free.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. And thanks to Mbak Linda Bustan. I want to introduce myself. My name is Lalang from Purbalingga. Okay, thanks for your presentation, Mbak Linda, about the Chinese churches in Surabaya. Okay, Mandarin Chinese churches in Surabaya. So I look that the original Surabayan Chinese Christian from mainland China, so is not influenced by the Chinese political. So this case is the original Christian, what we call the original Christian, because from the literature we can see that the political leader in mainland China, Dr. Sun Yat-sen was also a Christian. So I want to ask to you some questions. Why the Church of the Chinese was built in Surabaya. Is the strength, the exclusive, the Chinese itself? So and then it's so interesting for me. You're collecting data with the Cina Totok and the Pranakan. Is there any descendant line in the Chinese? Okay. And then for the last question from me is, you say that there is a syncretism. So the main church, the main church, is that heresy? Okay. Okay. Thank you. That's my question.
Thank you, Mas Lalang, Pak Lalang from Purbalingga. So you asked 3 questions about why the Tionghoa THKTHK split to 2 synod or 2 churches that you mentioned, GKT and GKA. So my answer is this: the Tionghoa THKTHK that changed its name to Gajah Kristus Tionghoa under the order government become or split to GKT and GKA due to the internal conflict, Mas Lalang. They have
Yes.
different, they have different opinion about how to manage the assets, and also the conflict about to ordain the leader that one of the group did not allow it, but the other pushed to their leader, their choosing leader, to be the pastor. So and also because of the different perception about how to establish the new seminary that called the STTIAA. For the later on they develop a new GKT, develop new seminary that called Institut Aletheia, Institut Sekolah Tinggi STTITA, ya, Institut Aletheia in Lawang, in East Java. So because of the internal conflict. For your second questions about there is another line except Toto and Pranakan Chinese. So this based on the scholars divide Chinese into Toto and Pranakan. Toto refers to China-born Chinese. They can call our first generation, and they from mainland China migrate to Indonesia and migrate to in this case to Surabaya. And Peranakan is the person or Chinese that mingle with the local. They also mix marriage with the local, and they cannot speak Mandarin or any Chinese language any longer. So that's why, from the scholar perspective, Chinese can be divided into two groups, Toto and Peranakan. However, based on the scholars in Indonesia, there is no more Toto in terms of the what they call it Toto Indonesian, but Peranakan Indonesian, because almost of them were born in Indonesia, and they speak in Bahasa Indonesia or local language. However, from my interview at or interlocutors informant, they said they regard themselves as Toto, because they said that they don't have a mixed blood, but also they get married with the same Chinese, and also they speak Mandarin in their daily life. So they consider themselves as Toto than Peranakan. But that what I said before that, based on the scholars, there is no Toto any longer, but Peranakan Chinese. And for your third questions about what the practice of syncretism. So in the church leader, when they still practice Chinese tradition, for example, they practice Chengbing. They go to the graveyard and they pray to the ancestors for the in perspective of church leader perspective, they call it syncretism. But for the Chinese Christian who practice the Chinese tradition, they said that it's not what is syncretism, because they give a new meaning to what they do. They do not use joystick or hyo. They pray not to the ancestor, but they pray to the Lord. So why they still practice the Chengbing Chinese tradition? For them, they still practice Chengbing because they want to introduce their family or their children or their grandchildren to know, to still have related with the ancestor, just to make the next generation know about their ancestor, but not to pray or not to practice the Chengbing as the Chinese tradition believes. So this is what I call the I call it hybrid identity, because they still practice, but they give new meaning from Kauw perspective when the new meaning given to some activities, it also can call hybridity, not just lost one of the identity marker, but also include or give it accommodate the new meaning for the activities. It also can be called a hybridity. So that my answer, Pak Lalang. Hopefully can give you more understanding about the Chinese Christian.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there any response back, Mas Lalang or Pak Lalang? Feel free to respond back the comment from Mbak Linda earlier.
Okay. I want to comment about the syncretism, and because I construct my question is from the Martin Luther. Okay, for Martin Luther, the different practice from the religion. Okay. Was including a heresy. Okay, so how can the Surabaya Church Chinese avoid the stereotype, the heresy, and etc.
Okay, thank you, Mas Lalang. I think the key point to answer your question is on the give new meaning. For example, if you remember about how we celebrate Christmas, Christmas also at the first meaning of Christmas that started in, if I'm not mistaken, on the 4th century. So it's originally to worship the god of sun, right? But later on in Christianity, they give a new meaning to Christmas, that we celebrate Jesus Christ as the Son of God that came to the world. So I think this the similar with how the Chinese practice Chengbing, with give new meaning without we thought still practice their original meaning, that worship to the ancestors. So maybe the comparison about the Christmas, celebrate Christmas, and also how the Chinese celebrate practice Qingbing can answer your question, Mas Lalang.
Okay, thank you very much, Bu Linda.
Okay, if it's enough, thank you, Mas Lalang, for the question and response. So the keyword is the Qingbing is okay. Mbak Evi, I think, have risen. So please feel free, Mbak Evi, to speak out. Mbak Ida, sorry. Mbak Ida, please.
Okay, thank you, Mas Iman as a moderator. Thank you, Mbak Linda, for agreeing to accept our invitation to talk in Meditation Forum. And I want to ask us about that. You said that there is an interaction between the in-group and out-group in Chinese Mandarin-speaking churches, and the interaction form their identity, both to preserve their Chinese culture and also to become hybrid. And I want to know, is there any religious symbols or rituals or practices based on Chinese tradition that perform in church? If there is any, maybe you can, would you like to talk about more about that, about the symbols or rituals that conducted or performed in the churches based on their Chinese tradition? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mbak Indah, for having me to this Wednesday forum. Yeah, there is in church, there one of tradition, a Chinese tradition that still celebrate until now, started from the Reformation era. Actually, they don't celebrate publicly under the New Order government, that we call it Imlek, or Chinese New Year. So nowadays, the Chinese Christian in the Chinese-speaking churches, they celebrate Imlek, but in a different meaning from the original, from the Chinese traditions. They give meaning that this Imlek, we celebrate the festive that as a thanksgiving to the Lord, and pray for the next following year. God bless them, and also God give help them to enter the new year. So it's not based on what the ancestors practice, like they have to worship, or they have to like have the a certain like what we call it, that prayer, traditional ritual prayer as a Chinese tradition. But now they come to the church, they still wearing the red cloth, but as a joy, as a like a happy, as a how they celebrate the what is it, the celebration in China. So because red is very important color in Chinese tradition, so they still now they most of the Chinese that still have what it conduct the service, bilingual service, they still practice Imlek service, Mbak Ida.
Yes.
Thank you, Mbak Linda.
Thank you.
Is it enough, Mbak Ida? Okay, thank you. And we have a question from Mas Haris. Probably you can raise up your voice to make discussion lively. Please, Mas Haris. Okay, maybe I will read it to Mbak Linda, for Mbak Linda. I was wondering about the juncture when the New Order planned to do assimilation from the Chinese towards being local or having Indonesian culture. I found in your writing that the assimilation was failed to be generated. Then how does Chinese Christians survive the anti-Chinese sentiment that was strongly established in the New Order? There's very strong question from Haris. Oh, all right. Maybe Mbak Linda can answer directly. Please, Mbak Linda.
Thank you for the question, Mas Haris Fatwa. Yeah, under the New Order government, there are a huge change in terms of how the Chinese consider or understand themselves, because the New Order government closed the Chinese school, abandoned, yeah, or they have to prohibit it for Chinese organization in also its language or Chinese tradition or Chinese culture in the public. So the Chinese Christian in the Mandarin-speaking churches, they maintain their Chineseness in their internal church. So they still have like a Chinese services or Chinese language services. They still have that services, but just for internal, not public. So I think that one why they can still conduct or still can hold the Chinese services, because it's just for internal, not for public. And also when they celebrate Imlek, not under like publicly, but just for internal. Not all the church still practice or still celebrate Imlek during the New Order government, but some of the church still practice or still celebrate Imlek in their church for internal members under the church under the New Order government. So the New Order government abandoned or prohibited Chinese culture in public. So that's how the Chinese Christian in the Mandarin-speaking churches negotiate their identities, ethnic identity. They celebrate it or practice it internal for their internal members. Mas Haris, I hope my answer can.
Okay, Mas Haris, maybe is there any response back? Okay, your chat actually only privately in me. No. All right. Please, everyone who's next to respond Mbak Linda's presentation, feel free to raise up your voice or virtually by hand. And probably I will invite Pak Leo or Pak Iqbal who has a concern on this topic. Pak Leo, who is master in Christianity, probably can add something.
Thank you, Mas Iman. Probably not a question, but a comment. When, because we already engaged in the, I think twice with the examination, so I think I already enough make Bu Linda in trouble, so I won't give a question. I just wonder whether when you going to publish your research in Indonesian, please, so everybody can learn from your fine research, Ibu Linda.
Thank you, Pak Leo. Pak Leo is was one of my examiner and very supportive also as my professor at ICRS. Thank you, Pak Leo. Actually, I published one article as a book chapter that just published PDF ebook in on September 2020, Pak Leo, as a book chapter. But as monograph, I will take it and I will prepare it. It's not. I still have having time. I still have time. Yeah, I need time to translate my dissertation, English dissertation, to Indonesian. But however, I write it as a book chapter, Pak. Thank you, Pak Leo.
Thank you.
All right. Maybe if there are no any question, I will add some question, Mbak Linda.
Mas Iman. Oh, sorry, Mas Iman.
Yes.
Here in this forum, we have Bu Esther Kunchara. Bu Esther Kunchara is very have deeply understanding about the Chinese Christian or Chinese actually, especially Chinese. So please, Bu Esther Kunchara, maybe you have one comment or you have comment about this issue, so we can discuss it more.
Please, Bu Esther.
And also Pak Sindu Nata, Pak Sindu Nata also working in his dissertation about the Chinese Christian. Please, Pak Sindu Nata, if you want to give input to our discussion today.
Please, Bu Esther and Pak Sindu.
Profesor Esther Kunchara. Profesor Esther Kunchara or Pak Sindu Nata Kurniawan.
Hello, I'm sorry, Bu Linda. I'm sorry, what is this? Because I have something to do for a while, so okay. I lost.
But Bu Esther, we are discussing about the Chinese Christian construction, identity construction in Chinese Mandarin-speaking churches. And I think that Professor Esther also have many research about the Chinese. And if you willing, I think you can give input, a good input for us about this topic, Bu Esther, based on your research, Bu Esther.
Well, it's actually difficult to say it in a very short time. But I think what Linda was trying to see is that how the constructions of identity, when it is related to the religion, is that something that you would like to talk about, Linda?
Yeah, Bu.
Yeah, I actually see something very interesting that you already presented earlier about how the Chinese society, this Toto one, actually the word Toto is not used now. However, it refers to something that is when a person, sometimes a person can say that, oh, I'm still a Toto. Actually, it's not because they are coming from China, but it's because they feel like they are still attached to the tradition, the old tradition, the Chinese tradition, and so on. And so it is not so for them to identify themselves as the Peranakan who don't even speak Chinese. It's far from them. And they feel they are still attached with that. That's why they are still doing the tradition, even though they are Christian already. However, the traditions that they are celebrating they think that it is just a tradition. So it doesn't have anything to do with the belief. When you believe you are a Christian, that is your religion. In fact, that is also true with most of them who are Confucius. This is something that is very strange, actually. In Indonesia, we consider Confucius as a religion. However, Confucius is not a religion, actually. In fact, because when a person said I'm a Confucian, actually is trying to say that I follow the teaching of the Confucius. So that is what they are doing. And Confucius himself did not say anything about how people's relationship with God is. So there is nothing to do with God. It's all about human beings, relations one to the other. And so now that in Indonesia, Confucian is considered as religion, that is something that is unique of Indonesia, because the Chinese themselves, they don't look at Confucius as a a religion, but they all follow the teaching, even though they don't really like doing the study of Confucius, because all the teachings as if already ingrained in their heart, in their mind. So they are doing it out of something that feels natural. So if you are a Chinese, then you have to do it. Just like the Muslims in China, it's very different from the Muslims here in Indonesia. And if we can call Muslim here in Indonesia, it's Muslim Nusantara. Over there, we sometimes call them, oh, they are Muslim Konghucu. So because all this traditional belief, and it is all ingrained in their life, you cannot separate it from you. That is why when they are Christians, but they are still doing a lot of Chinese tradition, Chengbeng, and so on, it has nothing conflict, and it doesn't mean anything conflict with that. So it will go and will run as if natural. It's just natural there. So I think that is something that is very, very interesting about these Chinese people who are Christians but still following the tradition. Even for instance, the Imlek, and then they are doing some kind of the lion dance or the barongsai and so on. Those are all considered to be tradition. Although some people may argue with that because they are doing some kind of praying or whatever they start when they want to dance and so on. But anyway, there are a lot of other things probably that I probably can share. However, I don't think I will take all the time, So thank you so much, Linda. I hope that gives light a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you for your input, Bu Esther. Very important about how the Confucianism and Christianity basically they can compatible, not incompatible. Yeah, Bu Esther. Yeah, because there's a saying, Bu, one more Christian, so there will be less one Chinese. So based on that saying, Bu, so that's why I then also from Feng Gangyang and also from Chan Yang Hun itself, that for Chan Yang Sum said that the Chinese tradition and Christianity in several activities can be conflict because of the religious understanding or religious perspective on the activities. Thank you for your input, Bu Esther Kunchara.
All right, very fruitful insight for Professor Esther. And we have another raised hand from Mas Abdi. Please, Mas Abdi.
Okay, matur nuwun Mas Iman. Hello, Mbak Linda. See you again. And yeah, I just want to respond. And I also have a research with the Chinese in Yogyakarta now, in terms of the graveyard, actually, the graveyard activity of the Chinese people in Yogyakarta. And I found that a similar thing that some people in Yogyakarta and Chinese into maintenance, usually on regular basis, they hire the people to clean the graves, because now the second and the third and the fourth generation is not Confucian or is now has converted to Islam or Catholic and Christian. So, but on the Changbang, they come together to the graves, and after that they pray together based on their beliefs. And then it's similar with your research. Like they try to change the meaning. They try to change the meaning. It's not, they're not praying to the ancestor, but they pray to the God for the ancestor, something like that. And then also that's why the Sampong Pai in Sangpong in Yogyakarta could be maintained because of this interreligiosity. And then but in the other hand, when I go to another Pong, there's so many abandoned Pong Pai in Yogyakarta, and then usually it's because the third and the fourth generation and the later generation don't do anymore the maintenance the graveyards. And when I go to them and ask the relatives, most of them say that they choose to have the cremations for their family instead of the Pong, because they believe if they go to Pong again, it would be heretics for them. And so what I want to ask is, in your research, is there any respondent to do similar things, like they do the Changbangs or the diversity? I mean, from the older generation and the latest generation, because I think there is a different perception of this identity. And in my case in Yogyakarta, usually the older generation choose to be more Chinese identity, and then the younger generation, in my case, they usually say that the religion identity is more important. So they choose not to maintain the graveyard, most of them, and then but the older generation say that you need to maintain the graveyard. I mean, is that this trajectory? Because in Surabaya also, to abandon this older generation.
Okay.
Belief.
Thank you,
Okay,
Mas
thank you,
Adi.
Marinda.
Yeah, thank you, Mas Adi. The finding of my research in Surabaya, among Chinese Christian community, so there is a difference, Mas Abdi, difference between older generation and young generation, as you mentioned, the same in the Yogyakarta. So for old generation, they still maintains their Chineseness very thick. That they think that they consider themselves as Chinese, so they prefer or they hope that the next generation can be speak in Mandarin also, or dialect or Mandarin or Chinese language. But however, for young generation, to fluently in Mandarin is not because of the ethnicity matters or identity marker or ethnic identity marker to fluence in Mandarin, but because of the need of the global, Mas Abdi, the globalization that push them to fluent in Mandarin. So there's the changing of the perception why they have to speak in Mandarin, not because of ethnicity anymore, but because of the globalization need in today. That's one of the differences between older and young generation. And also about the practice of the tradition, Chinese tradition, there's also different meaning. So one of my suggestion for next research is about the research to see more clearly about the differences between older generation and young old and young generation. How did they perceive themselves as Chinese? Because it's very interesting, Mas Abdi. But I'm not deeply about how they perceive as the old and young generation, but based on my research, so I found that how they perceive about marriage with the same ethnic, or for young generation, they prefer to marriage not because selecting the spouse, not because of the ethnicity, but still religious is very important for them. So they prefer to marriage with the same religion, but it's not necessary for necessary to marriage with the same ethnic. So that's my finding, but different from the old generation. Old generation prefer their children married with the same ethnic group.
Is there any conflict, I mean, between the younger generation and the old generation in
Yes.
terms of theology and something like that?
Oh, because of the marriage, so the children, if they married with the different ethnics, so they maybe will be difficult to have a blessing marriage from their parents. But based on the I interview the church leader also, that the church leader I think have a very important role, yeah, to give understanding to the children, to make them understood that how the children want to marry, not based on the same background, but the same vision, same purposes in their life. So this are different. So this stage, I think the church leader have an important role to give the parents or the old generation understand how the young generation think about themselves and about the ethnicity.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Oh yeah, one more question. Is there any Catholic church who have Mandarin speaking in sermon or something like that in Surabaya?
I'm not sure, but I don't think so. They have Catholic church have the service in Mandarin. I don't think so.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mbak Linda.
Thank you, Mas Abdi. Pak Sindu Nata Kurniawan, do you want to say something or share your research, Pak Sindu, or give comment, Pak Sindu?
Okay. Thank you, Bu Linda. Yeah, sorry, I don't show my video. Yes. Thank you. I only comment about interested with the presentation of Professor Bambang from Cultural Science Department, Fakultas Ilmu Budaya from UGM also. I want to only comment about the term about pribumi, or about pribumi, because I'm interested with Professor Bambang statement from his book and from also some months ago from his webinar, that the construction of pribumi is not proper in Indonesia now, because Chinese Indonesians are pribumi also, because like Chinese Indonesians, especially from the second generation and so on, they are pribumi also. They are pribumi also and become similar with another Indonesian Indonesian ethnic. Other Indonesian ethnic. So we have the same. So I think this perspective is supported by Citizenship Act 2003, ya, Undang-Undang Kewarganegaraan tahun 2003. So we don't have any pribumi and non-pribumi, but Chinese Indonesians, Arabian Indonesians, Indian Indonesians have the same level with other Indonesian ethnics. So we need to declare, we need to socialize the proper term, because it's so dangerous if Chinese Indonesians not including, not declared as the unity of Indonesian. It's very, very dangerous. The term, the accused as asing and aseng is birth from the Dutch colonial construction, and it's not Bhinneka Tunggal Ika. It's not the founding fathers' construction. It's very, very dangerous, and it's not constructive. But it will become like a time bomb for generation to generation. So we need to declare, we need to socialize, we need to introduce the statement from the new Citizenship Act, or Undang-Undang Kewarganegaraan tahun 2003. And yeah, just it. I just want to share about it. Thank you, Bu Linda, for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Pak Sindunata. So I want to give a comment about your input. In Sukarno era, in the older era, Chinese was recognized as one of the ethnic group in Indonesia, as one of the ethnic in Indonesia. But during the new order, Chinese that exclude, that considered as a foreign or the other in Indonesia. However, during the Reformation, Chinese recognized again as one of the ethnic in Indonesia, Mas Hindu. So I think the Chinese Indonesian can be considered themselves as Chinese also as Indonesian. The same like a Batatniks, Ambonese, or Japanese, but also Indonesia. But that can be applied to Chinese Indonesia. The ethnic Chinese as an ethnic, but Indonesian as citizens. So we have a very important responsibility, and also we have a right and responsibility as Indonesian citizenship. I think we have to declare that Chinese is also one of the ethnic that recognized in Indonesia nowadays in Reformation era. Just what the Sukarno said, that Chinese is also one of the ethnic that considered or recognized in Indonesia.
Okay, thank you, Bu Linda, for your confirmation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mas Sindu, Pak Sindu.
All right, thank you, Pak Sindu. Probably for those who want to respond, we are online both on live stream, YouTube and Zoom. So if you are not be able to join in Zoom, so please write it down on the YouTube chat. But Linda, I'm wondering that regarding to the old and young generation, why the young is no longer have Mandarin speaking, because I'm wondering the influence of their school is very Western centric in the way they have a curriculum, like every event and competition, Olympiad and everything is very English is very prioritized there. Yes, I have joined in Ramadan class, Muslim student, but they school in a Chinese group, National Star Academy. You have heard that? Yeah. But yeah, they are very, they are shaped by their school to speak English and study English rather than Mandarin speaking. How do you think about that so far, Balina?
Yeah, thank you, Mas Iman. So that's the fact now about the Chinese Christian or Chinese in general. Because of the policy that held by the new order government, new order era, so that have a huge impact to Chineseness or to Chinese, especially on how they practice, how they show their Chineseness. That, and one of the important thing is education. What you said, based on what you said, Mas Iman, that education is very important, that will impact the generation or the student how to consider or identify themselves. So after when under the new order government, so there is no more Chinese school, and also no more Chinese language in public, and also no more Chinese in class. So that's why the generation who experienced that moment no longer can speak bahasa or can speak Mandarin, Mas Iman. So that's the fact. And because of that, the Chinese is not one of the subject in class also. But nowadays, in the information era, Chinese become one of the subject in the school, right? So that's why Chinese or Mandarin, we cannot say as a primary identity marker in the information era, because anybody can speak Mandarin because of the part of the curriculum, because of because of that the need of the globalization, not because of the Chineseness or synesthesia, yeah, but because of the need of globalization. So you see, many courses, Mandarin courses, anybody can took, anybody can attend, anybody can join the courses, Mandarin courses, right? So even for local, not Chinese, can speak Mandarin more fluently, maybe compared with me. So I think it's changed. The policy, government policy will impact huge to the how the Chinese construct their ethnic identity, Mas Iman.
All right. It's very clear for me. Okay, Mbak Ida, please. I see your virtual hand raised up.
Yeah, thank you again, Mas Iman. I know Mbak Linda comes from Palembang. Maybe you can describe or give information to us the comparison the Chinese in Palembang and also in with your research in Surabaya. Maybe you can find also in Palembang or not. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mbak Ida. For when I come to Surabaya, actually, it's a little bit for me shock culture, because in Palembang, the Chinese culture still what is it, still thick among the Chinese people, and the local can accept the Chinese very well, based on my experience in my time, in my years when I in Palembang. For example, when we celebrate Imlek, so my friends from various religious ethnic will come to the Chinese houses, and we share the food, the meal. We can share the ang pao, maybe if the parents want to give ang pao to my friends, yeah. So it's very like a happy, like a fun time when we can celebrate Chinese or Imlek among my friends, various ethnicities and various religion in Palembang. But when one thing, and my friends can also speak Mandarin for daily life. We sometimes speak Mandarin, including me. Actually, when I come to Surabaya, I don't have friend to speak Mandarin any longer, so I cannot speak. I lost my ability to speak Mandarin, Mbak Ida. But when I come to Java, especially in Surabaya, so there's no more like a Imlek. There's no more celebration. So just like I came to Surabaya in 1990, Mbak Ida. So when I come to Surabaya, there's no more like there is no celebration, Imlek celebration. It's like the other days, not the like celebration days in among the Chinese. So and including how they cannot speak Mandarin compared with my friends in Palembang. So I think because in Palembang is quite far from the center of the government, so the impact of the policy is different to the Chinese in Surabaya. So in Java especially, so the impact of the new order government is very clear, and we can see among the Chinese in Java, they could not speak Mandarin or celebrate their Chinese culture any longer compared with the other part, especially in Sumatra. In Medan, North Sumatra, Medan, and also Singkawang or Kalimantan, Pontianak. So I think that's a quite different. It's depend on the context, on the cities, on the how they experience the influence of government, or how many Chinese that in that place, and also how they strengthen their Chineseness will give a different result by that.
Thank you, Mbak Linda. So it's good, or it's better to be far from the government, from the center, right? Because
on what government, Mbak Ida? Which government that
yes, in this context, right? And so they can express their religiosity freely. Then in Surabaya, when you say that it's near with the center of the government. Power. Okay, thank you. It's interesting, Mbak Linda. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbak Ida.
All right, it's very interesting discussion between Mbak Linda and Mbak Ida. And friends, probably we have last questions because we are now already have 5 minutes left. So please, everyone who wants to comment or suggestion to Mbak Linda, especially in response to the research, future research, the possible research to do. All right, maybe we have to end our discussion today. Sadly, we have a limited time. And Mbak Linda, probably you have last suggestion or statement in our today's discussion. Please feel free.
Can I start now? Okay, yeah. I think the construction of identity, it will still in progress, in going process. It's not, there is no ending of the construction of identity. So it will like a construct and reconstruct about the identity. So we have like to open our mind, open our heart about how the other, when we this the construction of identity is based on the interaction and also identification. So during our existence in Indonesia, we still have the interaction with others, and also we make an identification with others, that similarity and differences between us and them. So that my close statement that the construction of identity is never ending, Mas Iman. We still construct and constructed our identity until the last day of our life.
Yeah, it's the last argument and last suggestion from Mbak Linda. And thank you in advance, Mbak Linda, for joining our Wednesday forum in this week. And also friends, Mas Abdi, Mbak Ida, Pak Leo, Pak Iqbal, Professor Esther, thank you very much. Thank you in advance for your concern. Yeah, see you on the next our weekly forum, and bye.
Thank you, Mas
Thank you,
Iman,
Mbak
Mbak Ida,
Linda.
Mas Abdi,
Ditunggu bukunya,
Bye.
Mbak.
Pak Leo,
Thank you.
Pak Silbul,
Ya,
Mas
bukunya
Iqbal.
ditunggu.
Monografnya ditunggu loh, Mbak.
Thank you, thank you. Oke, yo. Izin pamit ya.
Silakan Mbak, makasih banyak. Jaga kesehatan.